Picture the Western Front in the winter of 1917. The air above the trenches hangs thick with the smell of cordite, wet clay, and something older. The quiet rot of a world turned inside out. Mud is a living adversary that swallows boots, buries rifles, and smothers men. In dugouts carved into the chalk of northern France, soldiers crouch over flickering candles, writing letters they are not certain will arrive. But somewhere in the rear, something unexpected is happening. A woman is unraveling her hairnet. This is the story of one of the most overlooked acts of wartime ingenuity: the repurposing of domestic fashion into functional emergency signaling technology. A story about copper, creativity, and the extraordinary human instinct to communicate when the world goes silent. The wire behind the net. Understanding the hairnet antenna. The wireless sets issued to forward units during the First World War were crude, bulky, temperamental, and desperately sensitive to antenna quality. A poor antenna meant garbled transmissions, and in the worst cases, entire battalions in blackout while artillery crept toward them. What signals officers needed was fine, flexible, conductive wire. Standard military wire was heavy and in short supply, but hairnets worn by women across Britain and France were made from fine-gauge thread, woven around a copper or silver-coated wire core. Stripped and reconfigured, these nets became workable makeshift antennae. Women in base hospitals and auxiliary roles donated them with an efficiency that shamed official supply chains. A nurse in Étaples might strip the wire with a thumbnail and hand it to a dispatch rider before dawn. What arrived at the front was not glamorous, but it worked. The trench as laboratory improvised fieldcraft under fire. The frontline soldier lived inside a narrow wound in the earth, walls of sandbags and planking bleeding moisture, duckboards sinking underfoot. In the Ypres salient, men waded through thigh-deep water and trenchfoot was nearly universal. Food arrived cold, water tasted of the petrol cans that carried it. Sleep came in stolen fragments between stand-to at dawn and the percussion of artillery that never fully ceased. In this environment, improvisation was survival. Soldiers built shelter from salvaged timber, cooked on smokeless fires, and repurposed every object. Ration tins became candle holders. Cartridge cases became tools. The mindset was fundamentally bushcraft: use what is available, waste nothing, solve problems laterally. Supply lines were unreliable, and the man beside you might depend on your ingenuity before nightfall. Camouflage and concealment, the art of disappearing. By 1915, visibility had become a death sentence. Camouflage netting, layered, garnished mesh that broke up the outlines of gun emplacements, was produced in vast quantities by women working in rear depots, weaving strips of burlap through net grids, using techniques inherited from fishing communities. The same hands that supplied hairnet wire were stitching invisibility into the battlefield. The principle for the modern practitioner remains unchanged. Concealment is always about breaking pattern. Once you understand that, every strip of fabric becomes a potential tool of disappearance. The signal that changed everything. Legacy of the hairnet antenna. The hairnet antenna appears in no museum and no regimental history. It disappeared precisely because it worked. The message got through, the transmission held long enough to redirect a gun battery or call in an evacuation, and then the net was discarded. But the principle is eternal. The most effective survival technology is rarely the most sophisticated. It is the technology that is available adaptable, and understood by the person holding it. Purpose is assigned by necessity and the willingness to see familiar things with fresh eyes. Closing reflection. What the mud teaches. Resilience is not a product you can stockpile. It is a way of seeing, the habit of looking at what you have and asking not what it is, but what it can become. The people history forgets, the nurse in the lamplit tent, the auxiliary who stripped her hairnet and handed over a coil of wire, often made the difference between a signal getting through and silence falling over the battlefield. Carry that with you, into the field and into every ordinary day. A message from Fieldcraft Chronicles. If this episode sharpened your eye for the survival potential in everyday objects, subscribe to Fieldcraft Chronicles and join a community of history enthusiasts, bushcraft practitioners, and preparedness thinkers who believe the past is a living manual. Share this video with someone who values history and self-reliance. Every share carries this forgotten knowledge forward. The signal is still going out. Help us make sure it gets through.